Because if he knew then he trusted you to do it, and he thought, well, you must have got better, or because to actually trust you to do that, because if your furrows weren't straight, your machine couldn't lift the potatoes.
No.
And you would then, if the furrows were bent, you would hear something. You know, it was like you may as well have gone home, been caught in bed with his daughter.
Yeah.
The crime would have been less, to be honest. But you knew you'd made it when you were given the job of making the furrows, because that was it was a skilled job, that, to make them straight.
Yeah.
You know, because you'd have to know the layout of the field, so you'd have to know what shape the field was and how to lay them out properly. Because if you didn't, you'd end up with small ends, and that was another one the machine couldn't get round. So you'd end up chewing what you planted anyway. So you'd have to dig them up by hand. So you'd dig your potato ends up. What some farmers would do is they would get the new potatoes from there and dig the ends up for the new potatoes.
Yeah.
But then you'd have a machine then to plant your potatoes, and that was done by hand. That was a bit of a dirty job. That you knew you were on that job when you were doing it.
So did you were you on the back of a tractor doing that, or did you just have to walk along with?
No, you'd have a tractor with I can't remember the name of the machine, but you could literally leave the thing if your furrows were straight and deep enough.
Yeah.
You'd leave the tractor running, ticking over as it's going down, and there'd be two of you sat on the back of the machine with the cups, and the cups would be coming round, and you preset the cups. So if you wanted some potatoes you could grow quite close together. Others needed space, so you'd set the cup up so the spacing would be right, and you put your cut potato in that cup and it'd go around.
Yeah.
And the farmer would walk behind and just checking that everything was right, and then the tractor come to the road at the end, you'd jump off, you'd turn the tractor around and go back the other way.
So the tractor's on its own, is it going?
Yeah,
so
just ticking
it off, and it'll
just if you made them furrows straight enough and deep enough, they wouldn't come out.
Right.
They'd just tick along on its own.
So the wheels are in the furrows.
In the furrows,
yeah.
And off it would bob, and you just keep going towards the end, and you'd only need to be on there to spin it round at the end.
Yeah.
That's why it was important you got the things straight.
Yeah.
And that was for the potatoes. Cabbage were the same. You'd have to have straight runs for that. Carrots were different.
Yeah.
Carrots were sowed in, because carrot seeds are like like apple seeds. They're very small, and you'd have a machine that would sow so many ounces of seed per run. So you'd run your seed up, and you could sow them into 4 lines.
Yeah.
So one man could do that. One person could do that. You used to put a pre-emergence in there, which created like a fog, a gas. But it was all right as long as you didn't disturb the soil.
Yeah.
And if you were one of the farmers who only a Travis, he got it wrong, and he had to go and replough the grass,
right.
And he ended up in hospital. And nearly killed him because he gassed himself.
I'm just going to stop. Pause. I'm going to change the. Okay, so we've planted our seed potatoes, carrots, whatever else. What you've obviously got to wait for them to grow. What would you do in that sort of time?
You'd keep them ground weed free. You'd run the rakes over. You'd just keep it generally tidy. Put your bird scarers out to keep when the shoots started appearing.
Do they actually work, bird scarers?
Yeah.
Some of the scarecrows.
Some of the scarecrows, but some of the scarecrows will leave a lot to be desired. But you could use your bird servers, which are based on gas cylinders. So you put some of them out to ward off the birds.
Right. So they just make an explosive noise.
I know when the Wildfowl Trust was built, a lot of farmers were against it.
Yeah. Because
of the amount of carrots that geese and that could eat, and especially for the corn and that. But I think they've just realised that it never happened. Right. They were told, they'll eat this and eat that, and generally they were very concerned, but it never materialised. I think the birds were fed and kept happy where they were. They didn't need to go looking elsewhere. Occasionally you catch them on the fields, and then you drive over with a tractor, scare them off. And occasionally you take your shotgun out and you bag a few, but they weren't very tasty. Some of these wild geese, they were full of fish and the meat was very strong. You had to have a particular taste for it. But while you're waiting for the things to grow, you generally do a lot of keeping the things clean, tidy, keeping the yard tidy, getting ready for the summer, getting your machines ready. One of the big things was the harvesters.
Yeah.
Having to get the harvesters ready.
Did you have your own harvesters?
Yeah. Some farmers would hire.
Yeah.
They'd get people into, and there was companies that would come in and do the harvesting for you, and I suppose that was a cost. They'd work out the cost of it, but we had our own harvester, and we'd have to keep it up to scratch, and that could be involve quite a lot of work. That.
Yeah.
Oiling, greasing, replacing.
Did you have to take it to bits and then put it
back together again?
Put it back together again?
Put it back together again.
Yeah.
The bearings would go a lot. You'd find the dust to get in the bearings, and the bearings would burn out. And then the where the potatoes used to run up, they were done like in with bars, rubber sheath bars, and they'd have to be replaced, and that would mean grinding them off, removing them, putting the new ones in, and bolting them into place.
Yeah.
That was always a tricky job, and especially if the belt, the lifting belt went. If the lifting belt went, that was it. You finished till you got it repaired. And sometimes you'd have to bring in the place from Ormskirk, and the name of it actually is not Attersley's, Esfords, and they would come and because they had the tools and the knack to, because them belts could weigh half a ton.
Yeah.
You couldn't lift it.
How long would they be taking to come out?
They were literally, the farm would want them there as soon as they put the phone down.
Yeah.
But within an hour.
Right.
Within an hour.
So they weren't waiting for days or
If it was a particularly really busy summer.
Yeah.
And there's a lot, then they might have to wait till the next day.
Right.
But as a rule, they come out on the day, and they did the job because it was in their interest to keep the farmer happy, basically.
Yeah.
So they come and do the job as best they can and quick as they can. And for particular tricky things, like with it being a moss, it was prone in areas to be wet. Even in summer, you get your wet areas. And I once buried a tractor. It was that I buried it that deep in the mud. I had to climb out the back to get out.
Yeah.
And it just sank. It just hit a wet patch, and just sank up to beyond its axles, and we had to bring in a firm called Johnson's at Banks, and they were well known, very, very, I think they actually were nationally recognised for things like that steam engines, and they used to have their own steam engines, they used to run them every year in shows, but they come out with their heavy equipment and get it out. It was fascinating in watching them set the pulleys up. Because they'd have when the pulleys were set up, as they started pulling, an ounce at one end, it'd be 2 ton at the other end because the way the pulleys were set up. Yeah. It was actually an education to watch them set out the way they set out things to pull out extract tractors or out of the moss, and they were quite well used to it.
Yeah. So come summertime, everything's grown and it's everything forward and get it all up out the ground. Was it weather dependent? I mean, could you do some of it in wet, or did it have to be dry? Or
it was weather dependent. I mean, I think farmers around here, they live and die on the weather. Potatoes, you get your potatoes are June, so you start with your new potatoes in May, and then that'll drift into the potatoes being lifted by the potato harvester in June, and then you'd have to knock off your tops at the end of June, and you'd start lifting. Then you'd lift a lot of the potatoes. Then would be put in the barn. If they weren't going direct into the bags and onto the ready to go out on wagons, I think it was July time. You'd start thinking about barning them up, putting them into the trailers and for barns. They had to be dry then.
Yeah.
You'd try and get your potatoes dry, Plus the fields, if you try it, some fields were impossible to use if it was wet.
Yeah.
Because they literally, you would sink up to your axles.
Right.
But you try and get your potatoes out. Cabbages, it didn't matter when you did cabbage. Rain, snow, sleet, it didn't matter. Broccoli and cauliflower were dependent on the weather. If it come too cold, your broccoli would kill. If it come too cold for the for the cauliflowers, they turn brown, and no shop would have them then. So they would think, and then you get to August time, and then you're looking at the corn, you're looking at the sky, you're looking at the corn, because you want it dry, because it had to be in, I think it had to be less than 5% moisture. If it was too wet, the Ainsco's mill and places like that would just send it back. They just reject the load straight away. Right. But the others, you had to get it dry. But you also had to keep an eye on the weather, because if the corn was ready and you got a thunderstorm, you could lose your corn, because a clap of thunder could knock the heads off, and they'd drop then onto the floor, and that would be it. You'd lose a lot of it. Well, we've actually harvested in the rain, because we knew we had to get this corn in, so we've done it in the rain, and then you spend days then in the silos drying it with a massive industrial gas heater and a tractor, and that tractor will be going, and that gas heater will be blowing air through them corn 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to dry it out. And you'd have to get it dry, and then you used to get a man coming from the buyers, and he'd put his he'd have a moisture probe, and he'd probe it, and he'd either say, yeah, it's ready, or no, we need a few more days, or it had to be below a certain moisture percentage. And in the same barn we used to store our nitrogen for the soil, when we used to spread ready for planting, before we plant, we put the nitrogen in. That was always accounted for, that. Especially after the 70s, when the IRA started making bombs out of it. Right. So you had to have a special license. You had to have a license to be able to sell it, and it'd have to go. You'd have to track where it was. So you'd have to. If you'd ordered a ton of it, and you got your 40 bags, you had to be able to account for them 40 bags. Right. I always remember that one. That was always to me it was always strange, but now I'm older, I realise what it was for, because you could actually make an explosive out of it. And his barn eventually did burn down. Yeah. A long time after I left. And part of the reason was, I think, some of this nitrogen ignited, and it literally put the barn to its foundation. Yeah. But yeah, that was always a good time harvesting. You get Johnson's in from Banks. They had the Volvo, green Volvo harvesters, and they're still going. Yeah. They maintained them to.
These are the
combine harvesters.
Wheat and barley, yeah.
I think they used to have 3 of them.
Yeah.
And depending on if everything was right, it was sunny days, and I mean, you used to get some beautiful days. You'd be working from 8 o'clock in the morning, and you'd still be going at 9 o'clock at night, and light nights, warm nights. The farmer's wife would always bring you out your dinner, your tea, your supper. They'd look after you. They'd always bring out food into the fields. Yeah. Bring out tins of tea. So you'd have your tea brought out in tins. You go, if everything was right, you'd only see one of them, and the other one would be somewhere else, and the other one would be somewhere else. But if the farmer was worried about his crop and you had to get it in, you'd be servicing 3 of those harvesters, and that was a job and a half, that racing, because the hoppers would fill quicker than you could empty it back in the farm. Yeah. You'd auger it up, you'd tip it out into a giant hopper, and it'd be augered up into the silos. And they was quite dangerous, them augers. And there was a lot of accidents with them. People lose fingers and hands and arms. I think one of the local farmers, a fella called Webster, he went into one of these machines, and I think he never worked after that. Yeah. I think he lost an arm. He did other things, and he never worked after that. So there was a lot of accidents. The health and safety executive was used to come around farms like a rash, making sure everything was right. One of the bizarre ones we had was the man from the ministry wanted to know where the toilet was, and he asked me the question of what happens if you're down the bottom of that field there and you needed to go to the toilet. So I thought, well, time-honoured tradition is you find the nearest tractor wheel. And he said, well, what about if you needed to the toilet for the other thing? And by that time I'm thinking, well, I'll just drive back and use the toilet in the farm. Was a toilet there for me? Yeah, but if you needed to desperately go, I said, well, then it'd be a race. you know, someone would win, and then the farmer I was with asked him where his toilet was, and he said, well, I don't know what you mean. He said, well, you're out on the road now. I don't see you towing a portable toilet. What do you do when you need the toilet? He said, well, I drive to the... Well, that's what the lad does. He drives to the service station. So the fella put his clipboard away, got in his car and drove off. We never seen him after that.
He was trying to get you to say, I do it in the bush behind.
He's trying to get the farmer to it. And now, funny enough, if you go around some farms now, you will see a portable toilet in the field. You know, they put a portable toilets in the field, but it's so funny watching this exchange, you know. And they wanted to know where the fella's toilet was, you know. And he said, well, I got to stop. So, well, that's what he does. He stops and goes to the toilet.
Yeah.
You know.
How have you seen farming change since you've been doing it?
It's got more mechanised, I think, now. Yeah. It's bigger. Bigger is better. The tractors seem to have got more. You never seem to see four-wheel drive, 300, 400 horsepower. Mega monsters, you see them all over now. The farm with the biggest tractors at one time was Travis with his, and he used to have these huge four-wheel drive mohawk tractors for carting his carrots out. But now a lot of farmers seem to use big tractors.
Right.
They seem to use bigger machines to extract the stuff, but still talk to the farmers. And the funny thing is, the everything's gone up by the price of the food. So you're still getting your same price or roughly the same price per tonnage of potatoes as you were 10, 15, 20 years ago. Supermarkets, who seem to have cornered the market, they're very reluctant to pay actually what it's worth. You know, we used to argue that there's one thing you can put up. You can put everything up, price of diesel, petrol, but you can't put the price of food up. And that's one thing I've noticed, that the prices seem to have stayed the same, and yet
that's the price that the supermarket will buy it.
Yeah.
But you go in the supermarket, it's rising higher and higher.
Well, you used to get £1 a dozen for cabbage, so 1 dozen cabbage was worth £1 to the farmer.
Yeah.
And that same cabbage would be in the supermarket at 70 pence per cabbage. So we get 12 cabbage, and they'd be selling them at 70 pence each. So we were making what, 300, 400, 500% profit on those.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was always I think a source of contention. You know, that the prices are never the same, and they're still the same now. Prices are never the same. And if you talk to some farmers, they've encouraged their sons, and that's something I've noticed as well. Some farmers have not encouraged their children to go into farming. Like one local farmer here, Cropper, who I still talk to, his son's gone into university to work in the car industry.
Right.
He doesn't want him to be a farmer. He doesn't want him working 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. You know, he wants him to earn money and spend it at leisure time. You know. So a lot of them are still encouraging the children. The farmer that I work for, Alan Culshaw, when he retired, his 2 daughters were married one was married to Kenyan. I think his other daughter was due to get married, but they didn't carry on the farm. He actually he sold the farmhouse and rented out the land. He didn't want his daughters to go into farming.
No. I mean, in the long term, I mean, how do you see the future of farming in this country?
At one time we were self-sufficient. Just after the war, it's one thing that a lot of people don't realise is the war had its benefits. And one of the benefits of the war was we mechanised farming. So we were self-sufficient in everything. The idea was to cut down imports so you didn't have to rely on the ships being torpedoed. So, and if you read your history about the Second World War, diet improved, fitness improved, but the main improvement was in farming. It went mechanised, it went bigger, it went better, and we never imported. Now, I think we import 40% of what we eat, and it comes from abroad, and there's no reason why we need to do that. You know, if we were to promote farming properly, we wouldn't need to be importing food. We could go self-sufficient in foodstuffs. In farming.
Do we? The trouble with saying that is that we seem to eat a lot more different stuff these days. It's not just potatoes and carrots and cabbage. There's all sorts comes in from abroad that grows there that doesn't grow here.
We seem to eat exotic foods.
Yeah.
As you said, it doesn't grow here. And saying that, I mean, we export also a lot of produce. Banks now export. We import Spanish iceberg lettuce and some Spanish produce, but the Spanish drivers take our produce back to Spain because the Spanish like our lettuce and our cucumbers, which I find utterly bizarre. We import their lettuce, icebergs, and their cucumbers, and we export to them stuff that we grow here, which they can buy in Spain anyway. You know, and it seems that the economies have got everything's on a truck at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, they could grow different things here. Around here I've noticed now they grow a lot of sweet corn.
Yeah.
Which was you could never grow that when we were on farm. Some farmers that tried it just wouldn't grow. The seed wasn't strong enough to withstand the winter, so it wouldn't grow here. But we now grow it, and I've noticed that some farmers are growing stuff for biofuels.
Yeah.
You know, they're not selling it for foodstuffs. They're selling it to turn into diesel. And I think this is having a big impact on the prices because it's forcing up the price of food.
Yeah.
Because there's less of it around. But at one time it was always a sense of pride, I think, with the farmers that they could grow everything that the country could eat. But now it seems to be we import. If you go to the Tesco's, you see they make a big deal out of this stuff was grown in Lancashire. Well, it should all be grown in Lancashire. They shouldn't need to sell.
No.
They shouldn't need to import carrots from France or potatoes from Jersey or Egyptian new potatoes. Everything could be grown here, but it doesn't seem to be.
Yeah.
And I've noticed a few. It was very arable round here. There's a lot of arable land, but I've noticed a few places now they have sheep or cattle on there, or they grow grass. Growing grass to sell to football teams, which I think is a complete waste of a field that could be growing potatoes, carrots or wheat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's grown up recently, hasn't it? The turf farming.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether that's causing the pinch with if they're not building houses, because as well as football pitches, they'd sell them to builders to grass the lawns, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I've noticed a lot turf land seem to have acres of land here for growing turf, and it is good ground.
Yeah.
It is good soil to grow turf in because it's content.
I noticed they've grown turf on where the strawberry farm at Newbury is.
Yeah.
Where we live on that.
That's shut now, hasn't it?
That's shut. They're not doing strawberries now. They've got turf on it.
I used to go there when I was a kid. It was one of the things we used to do as a child, and it's one of the things we used to look forward to. Your mum used to take you out pea picking and strawberry picking, and you used to get paid for it. But you could also gorge yourselves. I mean, at one point you'd be sick on strawberries. You wouldn't eat strawberries because you'd be so sick of them. And peas, used to get paid for doing peas. Yeah. And that seems to have, that just seemed to just die off. And now that place has gone. Now it's like something, you think, well, that's changed and they're probably never to come back again. Because you can bet your boots that at some point that ground will be used for houses. It'll be concreted over and there'll be 50 houses there.
Well, there were plans to put 200 houses on it.
200.
Or whatever. Whether that'll happen, I don't know. There's certainly opposition.
But I've noticed also a lot of farms around here have gone to, Cultures is another one. The field I used to hate ploughing because it was so awkward to plough. It was in all shapes. It was all angles. Has now got horses on it. Right. It's a stables. Yeah. So it's gone to just keeping 20 horses rather than, and I think that's probably systematic of what's happening. Is that a lot of land's being taken out of use, so that gap then has to be filled with imports. We shouldn't need to import any food. Yeah. We grow enough of it here. We should be, in fact, probably exporters of food rather than importers. To be honest.
If I can move on, what do you remember about Burscough? Busca Town and Burscough Bridge. I don't know whether you favoured one or went to one rather than the other. What sort of shops did you have?
We lived in Busca Town till I was about to 1969, so I'd be 8, and my sister was born 68, so we moved to we moved to where we are in Oral Lane, and my dad bought that house with a council mortgage. You could actually get a mortgage from the council at a fixed rate, which was great when Thatcher started to push the interest rates up. My dad was sitting pretty because his was a council mortgage on a fixed rate. The type of shops that were there is, you get a lot of similar shops now, but you didn't have any like they got handbag shops or trinket shops. They were functional shops. You had 3 banks. You had a TSB. You had a Royal Bank of Scotland, which was I think Midland Bank, and you had the NatWest. So you had 3 banks in there, and the 3 banks used to service the farmers. And they were mainly geared up for farming. You had things like your news agents. You had a couple of news agents. You had one in the corner where the opticians is now.
This is in Burscough.
In Burscough village, in Burscough Bridge.
Yeah.
There was where the opticians is now on the corner, where opposite where the wharf is. That used to be news agents because my auntie used to work in there. She worked in there for years. And then there was also a news agents where the computer shop is, with KC Computer Shop. That was a big news agents. And I used to have a paper round in there. And I once took some sweets there, and my dad found the sweets and the wrappers in my bag. And he knew I hadn't paid for them, and he marched me back to the shop to apologise to the lady who run. She always used to do the. She was always dressed the same, and I can't remember the name of her, but she ran that shop for years, and she'd have a cardigan on, mittens with no fingers on, and she'd always have a ciggy dangling out of her mouth with about 4 or 5 inches of ash on it, and she was famous. That ash would never fall. It was famous for it. But they're the corner shop. The Ramages were there. They had always been there. The two liar.
Yeah.
They seem to have been there for years. And you had your likes of your in the up to where the greengrocer's shop is. That's been a greengrocer's for years there. And they had that was where the veranda used to be, the glass veranda, and that was always a central point for Burscough.
Yeah.
It used to look quite nice, and I think it got taken down because the council were no longer willing to pay for the upkeep of it. But that used to be in the winter when it was raining. That's where all the kids used to make for because it was sheltered, and under this glass veranda, and your parents knew where you was if it was a cold night, a damp night in the